Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're into the home stretch, the official campaign period before the April 23rd first round of the French presidential election. 4 candidates are now vying for a spot in the May 7th runoff of the far right's Marine Le Pen, Emmanuel Macron, a centrist, as well a conservative candidate, François Fillon, who's been dogged somewhat by scandal, and a surgeon we've been talking about in part 1 of our discussion, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's backed by the communists, the far-left candidate, with us to talk about it, campaigning for him. Sophie Rouser, welcome back to the show. Welcome back as well to Paul Bertrand, the youth wing of François Fillon's campaign. Bruno Cotres, researcher at Cevipof, the research arm of the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, and Sudhir Hazarising, the author of How the French Think, who teaches at Oxford University. We were talking about pessimistic versus optimistic, if you break down the candidates who are vying for a spot in that runoff. At his rally on Sunday, by the way, when it came to foreign policy, it wasn't just the EU. Jean-Luc Mélenchon blasting Donald Trump's decision to bomb a Syrian airbase that's alleged to have been the launch pad for a chemical weapons strike on civilians. The far-left candidate called it a, quote, criminal act that's irresponsible and an immense mistake. Centrist frontrunner Emmanuel Macron begs to differ.
If the peace that Jean-Luc Mélenchon defends is Vladimir Putin's peace, then count me out. If the peace that he defends means unilaterally disarming France in the face of our attackers and terrorist groups, count me out.
Well, this is another fault line, Sudhir, which is Russia. And here you have both François Fillon and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who are relatively sympathetic to Vladimir Putin. And Emmanuel Macron is the outlier in all of this. Are you surprised what's going on in France?
I don't quite see it like that. I mean, I think if you listen to... François Fillon is a former Gaullist. I mean, he still defines himself, he said so yesterday, as a Gaullist. And when you listen to Jean-Luc Mélenchon yesterday, he was talking about French foreign policy. The kind of foreign policy that he aspires to return to is what he regards as kind of classical Gaullist principles. And I think if you look back to French foreign policy between the late 50s and the early 1990s, there was a principle of, that was the Cold War era. So it was a principle of equidistance between the major blocs. And what I think both of these candidates in slightly different ways are trying to say is there isn't just one way in which France can position herself, which is right by the United States side. France has a kind of particular role to play in Europe, and that's a role that she has played in the past. And these two candidates feel that recent presidents, both of the left and of the right, because Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande have both taken France much closer towards the United States. And what I think both of them are saying is we need to step back a little, especially as the White House is now occupied by a rather interesting president.
Has there been a Trump effect on this race, Bruno Cotres?
I don't think so. I don't think so. French voters are mainly preoccupied by the economic situation of the country. When we interview the French voters, we are asking them, what is your first topic? At the time of voting, it is still unemployment. It's going to be also the question of social justice, inequalities, public deficits also. And I don't think that it's going to matter really foreign policy. Between the lines, yes, because you could see with what we heard from Emmanuel Macron, it was clearly one sign, which is to say to the French voter, look, I am like a president. Okay, I'm talking about the defense of France, foreign policy, and this kind of thing, when we know that Emmanuel Macron has a big issue, which is that he needs to look president. Because
presidential.
Yes, presidential, sorry. One of the big arguments anti-Macron was to say he's too young, he has not the experience, and clearly Macron was clearly between the lines saying, yes, I can do it, and I have the presidential style. So I cannot see any direct effect of the Russia or NATO or this kind of thing, but at one stage it is indirect effect and between the lines, because when François Fillon or when Marine Le Pen, they want French diplomacy to get closer to Russia, it's like talking also of different issues. It's not only about talking only about Russia and foreign policy, it's also talking about the West versus Islam. Also, when you start to say that Russia is doing a good job in Syria, so obviously between the lines you have other messages that are there.
Other messages that are there. Do you approve that message of Jean-Luc Mélenchon saying what he said about the Donald Trump's decision to do that airstrike in Syria?
Well, if we look at François Fillon program, is to bring peace to the world and make France safer in this world. François Fillon said we need to have the issue on Syria clear. I'm sorry, we need to find a way to hand...
But here Mélenchon called it a criminal act, the fact that they bombed the airstrip from which allegedly those Syrian planes took off to gas chemical weapons on civilians.
Well, we need to find a solution to end this crisis in Syria. The United States took this action unilaterally. We didn't... I mean, France was just aware of what they will be doing, but I think François Fillon want peace, and we have to talk to all the parties. I don't think the solution will be on destroying and using weapons. It will be by talking to all the parties. Yeah.
Sophie Rauser, the Mélenchon, one of his big mantras is that we have to outlaw war. In 1928, there was the Kellogg-Briand Pact that already outlawed war. It didn't have a very successful follow-up. It's easy to say, let's outlaw war. I mean, everybody around this table would be in favor of that as an abstract notion.
Yeah, but what is easy to say is also that you cannot prepare peace by preparing war. And this is, we are seeing currently, like an escalation of the defense issues and so on. Why is calling this a criminal act? Because this is not a legal intervention based on the sole and unique legal organization, meaning the United Nations. Like if you want to intervene, and this has been the practice of the US, in that way, Trump is not, different from the previous US president, We've seen it already in Iraq and many other times. So what we are saying is that we need to reinforce, talking about bringing peace to the world is good, but how do you do this concretely? You reinvest into United Nations.
Okay, but Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's for leaving NATO, one of the big criticisms leveled against the European Union is it's got this economic construct, but doesn't have the military might behind it to back it up. Would he be in favor of a European defense force?
For what and for whom? This is the question. I am following very closely these debates inside the European Parliament, so I can tell you a bit what is the atmosphere over there. And a lot of countries have the interest, see this defense union as an interest of using common means, basically the one of, let's be honest, the one of France and Germany, to pledge for a very, very worrying discourse over the war and over the threat of Russia. I think this is not a question, foreign policy is not a question of having friends and having foes. It's a question of geopolitics. You are speaking to a state. Doesn't matter that we don't like Putin. It does not matter. It's a neighbor country. We need to speak with the neighbor country. And especially in the framework of this Ukrainian conflict, we need to be very clear and put all the people around the table. And that as such, France has a role, a historical role that has been said earlier, that is very important, that we need to reinvest, but putting...
But that's backed up by having nuclear weapons and a seat at the UN Security Council.
Yes, of course. But, I mean, do we need to be sorry for this? We can speak about a reform of the Security Council. That's another subject. But you cannot create a defense union that will prepare peace by bringing in a debate that will be only the one trusted by some Eastern countries that are, with good reasons, and concerned about that border, but that are very, very, very worry discourse.
All right, we were talking earlier about the polls, the trends, the far right's Marine Le Pen, a seeming shoo-in up to now to reach the second round. She's gone to great pains to distance herself from the days when her father ran the National Front, and rhetoric that most voters find too extreme coming from him. But then came her remark on Sunday that denies France's responsibility for the roundup of Jews in Paris under Nazi occupation. Josh Vardy has more.
The French police of the time gave it the codename Operation Spring Breeze. In July 1942, over 13,000 French Jewish people were arrested en masse and held in the Veldiv Sports Center in Paris. Most were then sent to death camps in Eastern Europe. In 1995, then French President Jacques Chirac apologized for France's culpability in the roundup.
France, on that day, committed an irreparable act. It failed to keep its words and delivered those under its protection to their executioners.
5 years ago, President François Hollande again apologized for France's role. But French National Front leader Marine Le Pen now denies the country should accept any responsibility.
France is not responsible for the Veldiv roundup. I think, in a general way, if anyone was responsible, it was those who were in charge at the time, not France.
Le Pen argued that the true French Republic was being led from London at the time by General de Gaulle, not the Nazi-supported Vichy government. Jewish leaders and historians in France have accused Le Pen of revisionism.
It goes against the past 10, 15, 20, 50 years of historical research. So again, I ask the question, how does this help people accept to sow confusion in the middle of a presidential election?
The National Front leader's rival for the presidency, Emmanuel Macron, says that the French people should not forget who Marine Le Pen's estranged father is. Jean-Marie Le Pen has been convicted twice for denying crimes against humanity and has called gas chambers at Nazi death camps a mere detail of history.
Bruno Cotres, was that a blunder or a calculation on the part of Marine Le Pen?
It is hard to explain why Marine Le Pen goes on that, because you can see the cost of doing so. You cannot see really the benefit. It could be that Marine Le Pen, she can see the last trends in voting intention that are a little bit lower that she would like, obviously, and maybe that she needs to create some controversy in the public debates to reactivate her camp. But it is extremely risky.
Any publicity is good publicity? That kind of
it could be that she believed in that, but it's not the reality. It's a very explosive topic, actually, when you go back on some key historical time of France. By the way, it's not the first time that during the campaign we can see these historical controversies going back. We have seen Emmanuel Macron also coming on the issue of the colonial time of France. Now we can see the old style of the Front National coming back. So I think it's quite dangerous for these candidates, and they don't know exactly, we don't know exactly what is going to be the effect. I cannot see what would be or what could be the big advantage for Marine Le Pen, because those voters that believe that what she's saying, she's got them already.
So Dear Hazarizing, how do you interpret it?
Well, listening to Marine Le Pen across the campaign, I feel she spent quite a lot of time, because there are basically two national fronts, to put it very crudely. There's a kind of national front electorate that is popular, working class, that comes from the kind of deindustrialized parts of the country, and they're really not interested in these historical debates. They're interested in the kind of economic message as they see it, that the National Front is carrying, a message of protection for them. They feel that they've lost that protection from the mainstream parties. But then there's the other National Front, which is more southern, which is actually almost like a different party altogether. And that party actually does respond to this kind of language, because it's the old language of the xenophobic and anti-Semitic right. I mean, let's not beat about the bush here. That's what it's about. And perhaps because she feels that she's given too much to the kind of popular part of her wing, she now feels towards the end of her campaign she needs to kind of consolidate this other side of the party, especially as I think, I mean, they're all reading the same polls that we're reading, and what they're seeing is that things are tightening. And so now I think she really wants to consolidate her vote so that she makes absolutely sure she is on that second round.
All right, so two parties within the movement that supports, within one party that supports Marine Le Pen. Those voters that working class voters that used to vote communist and are now voting for the National Front, can they be swayed to do otherwise?
Well, I think they have, these are people who come from a Republican or a kind of popular culture, and some of them, if you look at the pattern of voting on the second round, what these voters do on the second round, typically they go three different ways, right? Some of them, about a third abstain, a third support a candidate on the right, and a third support a candidate on the left. So when a National Front candidate is not available on the second round. So I think a lot of people hope on the left that some of these candidates can be won back eventually. But the difficulty, certainly over the past 5 years, is that the Hollande government has really done very little that can reassure this kind of popular electorate, which has felt particularly acutely the effects of deindustrialization and unemployment in this country.
Part of the reason we've had primaries on both the right and left is that having this strong far-right party has really changed French politics and forced the others to consider, I guess, that first round like a second round already. So, Paul Bertrand, how do you explain the fact that France has changed so much?
I think we had a government of François Hollande for 5 years, and the situation is very bad, actually. You said that François Fillon is offering a pessimist vision of France, where that's only the reality of France. We offer a project to bring back France as the first economy in Europe in 10 years. That's what we want for the young people, as I am.
But he says what his initial campaign slogan was talking about courage, and there's going to be belt tightening, it's going to be painful. That's not the message that National Front voters want to hear.
It's already painful. It's already painful for everybody. We have 2 million of young people out of schools. We have 6 million of people unemployed or poor. It's already hard.
Sorry, how many did you say unemployed?
6 million people are unemployed.
The official rate is 3 million. Isn't the official unemployment rate? Is it? It's not.
Yeah, but people are partially employed, but they are looking for full employment, and you have people outside of the official rate. So we almost know that 6 million of people are unemployed.
Sophie Rauser, this redrawing of the landscape. First of all, do you agree with this idea that France is split between optimists and pessimists?
Yes, probably. I think people, as you said earlier, they've been suffering not only since the last 5 years, but I would go even further back to Sarkozy even. So I think they've been suffering a lot, and all these people disillusioned by the political casta, by the traditional ruling elite, let's say. They want something new, they want hopes, and certainly austerity and, tightening the belt, as you said, is certainly not an option they want to hear. And that is not, simply because for also economic reason, like how a small SME can have a order book that it is filled up if you have austerity for the teachers, for the nurses, it's not to provoke an attack, but it's like I would really like to understand, like, for example, when François Fillon is pledging for more security and for France and in the world and so on, how can you do so when you have less policemen? How can you pledge for better health for French citizens when you have less nurses, and so on and so on. So I think what we need, the risk for Europe and France today is deflation. It's not inflation. So we need a little kick, a little boost to our economy so that we can have a better growth, and that a better growth that is not only, just about figures, but also for human beings.
Just a final word on this. Bruno Cotres, you downplay a bit the Trump effect on this election. However, we've seen politicians who are able candidly to speak directly to the people outside of the traditional media. You see also this optimist versus pessimist vision that Sudhir was talking about. Again, I get back to that question: what is the factor to watch now in this home stretch when you look at those at this kind of a?
It's the $1,000 question. Obviously, there is not only one, obviously, but I'm sharing that view that we have this conflict between optimistic and pessimistic, or also looking backward, looking forward, looking to the past, looking to the future. If you look carefully to what Marine Le Pen she said, or what François Fillon also, it's like if you have the twilight in France, on France, and it was better before. Actually, we need to make
France great again.
We need to make sacrifice. Yes, and so I think that it is the basic roots of conservatism versus another view of the world, which is conservatism at the basic roots is quite frequently saying that the past was better. Actually, I'm not saying that with any judgment. I think it's like that. It is since the beginning of this political philosophy schools. And we don't need to be also naive, looking to the future is only good and these kind of things. So obviously, but truly, we have this conflict between two visions of the world and two visions of France
that are up against one another. And we'll know on April 23rd. Bruno Cotres, I want to thank you. Sophie Rauser, Paul Bertrand Sudhir, Hazari Singh. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Jean-Luc Mélenchon's rally in Marseille, the dockside, getting a lot of play.
Yes, absolutely. And he seems to be getting a lot of play everywhere. But the front page of L'Humanité today has an image from Marseille.
This is the communist daily newspaper.
Absolutely. So unsurprising that they chose to use this particular image, along with the words, the headliner, the ode to peace. Now, he was, of course, very, very lucky with the weather here, it has to be said. But it did kind of serve to make Fillon's 20,000 inside a conference hall in southern Paris look pretty dingy and old-fashioned by comparison to this. It has
it's always nice in Marseille.
Well, yes. It's certainly played into Jean-Luc Mélenchon's hands in this case. He's doing a lot to attract youth, the youth vote here in France. You could say that he's kind of France's Bernie Sanders, I suppose. Obviously, the message La France Insoumise, rebellious France, does tend to appeal to younger people. But also he's used technology in the form of the hologram that he used in Paris. He's going to be repeating that later this month on the 18th. He's going to be speaking in Dijon. But simultaneously, there will be these hologram rallies where his hologram appears in 6 other cities in France. Now, he's also come up with something, it's a campaign ad masquerading as an old school video game. And basically what you can do, you press the buttons and it won't work terribly well for me, but basically you shake down the villains that he would like to paint them as, which is basically financiers, other politicians, his political rivals. It doesn't seem to work terribly well for me on this computer, but this video shows what it should look like. The villains, in inverted commas, include his presidential rivals, Emmanuel Macron, François Fillon, also former President Nicolas Sarkozy. And you have to work your way up to sort of tackling these bigger names. It seems to be proving pretty popular. Jean-Luc Mélenchon tweeting that 435,000 different people have already played this game. And this Twitter user says it's literally the best thing that's ever happened in the whole history of political campaigning. Perhaps a slight exaggeration, but she certainly seems to like it.
She's a fan.
The other thing that's raising questions is this particular turn of phrase, which pops up quite regularly on the game. Can't stenchen the Mélenchon. Now, the problem with that is there isn't actually a word stenchon in the English language.
Right.
Possibly they mean staunch. When I looked it up online, there's actually a Wikipedia entry about this already because people have all been asking this question, what on earth does it mean? And what they think is that he was trying to come up with something like can't stump the Trump, which of course was a Donald Trump campaign slogan that worked quite well and rhymes. And so they came up with can't stenchen the Mélenchon. Just slightly unfortunate that that word doesn't actually exist in English.
It's a joke.
There is, though, more of a serious side to this website. You can also work out what your taxes would be under Jean-Luc Mélenchon. So say you earned 4,000 euros a month. If this way, let me type it in. But anyway, it'll calculate it for you so that you know exactly what you're getting yourself into, basically. And all this is basically serving to get a lot of people talking about him, unlike, of course, Benoît Hamon, who appears to be disappearing almost from view. In fact, Benoît Hamon himself said on French television a few days ago that he would want people to vote for Jean-Luc Mélenchon in the second round if he weren't to get through. Now, the likelihood of him getting through is pretty much zero. He, in fact, as The Guardian is reporting, his popularity is such, he's polling so low, that François Hollande wouldn't really have done that much better. We're talking 9–10% for Hamon versus 7 to 8%, which is what was expected of François Hollande. And of course, he's not standing, unprecedented here in France, because of his low popularity. And Benoît Hamon, it really does make you question quite what the value is of the primary system here in France, that things have gone so wrong. The Guardian's pointing out, though, that this election is hugely unpredictable, with very high numbers talking about abstention or being undecided. So really, all to play for.
All right, all to play for indeed. Many thanks, Emma James. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.